Hello everyone, Flavian here, back again with another Brawl deck tech. Today I want to talk about Fynn the Fangbearer. So, this is Fynn the Fangbearer. He's 1 and a green. He's a legendary creature human warrior, and he's a 1/3, and he has Death Touch. And his main ability is whenever a creature you control with Death Touch deals combat damage to a player, that player gets 2 poison counters. A player with 10 or more poison counters loses the game. So, pretty simple little creature. So, Fynn is really interesting because he works as sort of a Death Touch Lord. He gives you a reward for hitting your opponent with Death Touch creatures. Normally, Death Touch creatures are good at fighting against creatures, but bad at hitting opponents because they normally have quite low power, but they will trade with basically anything they block in combat. Fynn incentivizes your opponents to block your Death Touch creatures, therefore meaning that they trade, and meaning you can sort of get mana advantages out of using your cheaper creatures to kill theirs. And he provides a fun alternative win condition. And I like fun alternative win conditions. They're always cool. So, Fynn's very simple. He wants to hit your opponent 5 times with Death Touch creatures. Doesn't have to be him, but he has to be in play when it happens. So, the goal of the deck, protect Fynn, hit them with Death Touch creatures. So, we're looking for cards that give us evasion to make us harder to block. Cards that protect Fynn. That's basically it. Oh, and obviously cards that have Death Touch. First, we're going to look at the Death Touch creatures, of which you may notice there are not very many. So, the 2 best ones in your deck are Moss Viper and Tajuru? I'm going to call it Blightblade. And Blightblade, because you can play them on turn 1 and then play Fynn on turn 2 and immediately attack, and your opponent is very unlikely to be able to block or willing to block. So you'll get 2 poison counters, so that's off to a good start. So, these are 2 of the best ones. The other ones are, sometimes Crystalline Giant will have Death Touch if it gets it off its ability. So, this one's pretty unreliable, but, you know, sometimes it works. Then it's OK Adversary, who not only has Death Touch, also incentivizes you for managing to hit your opponent, because he also draws you a card. I think it's pretty fun this deck plays this card. I loved this card back in Eldraine Limited, so I'm happy to see it back. Then we've got Ornery Diliophosor. Man, some of these names are hard. This is another Death Touch creature. Ignore the second line of text. Getting +2/+2 doesn't really matter. It happens sometimes, but it's not really a focus. They just need to hit your opponent. Like, this card's fine. I could see cutting this card, but it's just another Death Touch creature. There aren't that many in mono green, so this is one of them. Next, Questing Beast. Questing Beast is an amazing Death Touch creature because he basically always hits them. He has haste and he's hard to block. And eats planeswalkers. Questing Beast is quite strong. But, like I said, most of what this deck's about is trying to get Fynn through. So, I'm just going to go through the cards that help with Fynn. Fynn also, because he's got Death Touch, is very good at fighting. And also spells that let you deal damage to another creature with one of your creatures. Bearing that in mind, we'll just sort of go through those quickly. So, obviously, Blizzard Brawl. If you have 3 Snowlands out, just indestructible, but normally as a 1/3, Fynn's pretty good at fighting. This card will normally kill one of their own creatures, let you get in with your Fynn. There's also the next one is Devouring Tendrils, a new card from Strixhaven. Pretty simple, just deals 2 damage to an opponent's creature with one of your creatures. Again, if you target Fynn, one of their creatures just will die unless it's got indestructible because you have Death Touch. Rabid Bite, same thing as Devouring Tendrils, but you don't gain 2 life if you kill the creature. Then there's Ram Through, same thing as both prior, but this is an instant speed one. Warbride's Blessing, which makes Fynn a 1/5 and then makes him fight something. 1/5 is basically big enough to survive anything, so basically it means that Fynn will be completely fine. Those are the main ways of sort of like cheap removal interaction stuff in this deck. So we now want to be hitting with Fynn, and the best way to hit with Fynn is to give him some form of evasion. Cards like Shadowspear give him Trample, which is sometimes relevant. Which is always relevant because he has Death Touch, which means that he'll deal 1 damage to their first creature, and then the rest is damage to your opponent. Pretty good. Good with also your Death Touches. You can give him Flying with Cave and Kitesail, Zephyr Boots, or Wings of Hubris, or even Raven Wings. I've got Raven Wings also in here, which means that he is very hard to block because now he's a 1/3 flyer with Death Touch. Plus, you obviously have ways to keep getting through. So I've also just noticed that this deck was missing one of the new ones from Strixhaven. This deck should probably be playing Access Tunnel because it lets you attack with your Fynn later into the game when your opponent's got a solid board and lets him get in without being blocked. So you could win the game with Access Tunnel. So those are some ways to evade with Fynn. They're all pretty good. I've seen some people just straight up concede to putting flying on Fynn because they're like, oh, I can't win. Because say you've got hit in for 1, 2, maybe 3 times before you give your creature flying, and suddenly Finn's in the air, and they've got to find an answer to it really quick, or they're going to have a real problem. After that, we've got to think about ways to protect Fynn. So Finn's got to be in play to really make the deck pop. So easiest ways to do that is after casting him, live a Ranger's Guile or a Snakeskin Veil, or cast him, hope he doesn't get removed, and then leave them up for future turns. After that, it's Heroic Intervention, which is a similar thing to the previous 2 cards, but also lets you survive Wraths. And then after that, it is Mirror Shield down here. Mirror Shield's the worst one because it costs the most, but it is a consistent effect, so it will stay on Fynn forever. And a 1/5 Fynn with Hexproof is something that is quite hard to deal with, especially as Fynn will be attacking every turn. So those are the ways that we protect Fynn. And then the rest of the... Oh, sorry. One more. Destiny Spinner is also in here to protect Fynn from any counter spells that your opponents may have. That is basically Destiny Spinner's only job. But I like it in this deck for that. And I think in most green creature commander decks, I think Destiny Spinner being in your deck is actually not a bad shout. So after that, the rest is just generic good cards that sort of help with our game plan a bit, or are just pretty solid. For the first Arowan games, this doesn't help us get through or give us evasion, but it does make Fynn a 4/7 if he's in play. And that's pretty good. That's a pretty big Fynn then. It'll be hard to block, hard to kill, so that's pretty interesting. And you draw some cards off it, so that's pretty cool. Llanowar Visionary, it's a pretty good ramp card that draws a card. Cultivate, same thing. Broken Wings, if you have given Fynn flying with one of your fly effects, Broken Wings will be able to kill one of their flyers. Or this deals with problematic enchantments like the Prismatic Bridge, or other cards that are in your way. There are a few lying around. So I think this is an okay removal spell for this deck. Bala Ged Recovery is just a land that is also like a regrowth, so it's pretty useful. You can use it to push yourself through in the end game. Gem Razor. Now, Gem Razor makes Fynn a 4/4 trample Death Touch reach creature with this tech. So Gem Razor is another way to help Fynn get evasion, one that I did miss. He's probably my least favorite way to give Fynn evasion, because 4 power doesn't synergize with his ability. Regardless of the amount of damage you deal, the player will only ever get 2 poison counters. So it doesn't matter how much you deal as long as you deal it. So 4 power isn't amazing, but the trample does help a lot. After that is another fight spell that I missed, Struggle for Scamfar. You can cast this for pretty cheap if you foretell it. Giving Fynn a counter and getting him fight something will normally kill a fair amount of things, so Struggle's helpful as well. Then we've got Toski. Basically, your deck is saying, block my creatures because of Fynn, and Toski really helps them punish them. Toski really helps punish them if they don't block because of Fynn being on the battlefield. And it will help you draw cards, which can help you refill your hand with your very small, aggressive creatures, like your 1/1s, like them hitting and drawing a card is really strong. Next is Battle Mammoth, because it will draw your card if a permanent is targeted by ability. One of the ways this deck loses the most is a repeated barrage of targeted removal. Targeted at the right times to get through Finn's protection. So I often find the deck's fast enough and has enough removal to beat most creature decks, but a lot of removal will be hard. Battle Mammoth gives you a little bit of rewards, because if they're killing Battle Mammoth, they're not killing Fynn, and that's a pretty good place to be. And if they target Fynn, you get to draw a card and keep Battle Mammoth in play. All super solid. Then Kogler. Kogler's, as I've said before, is one of the best green creatures in the format currently. He comes into play, kills one of your opponent's creatures, and then he can destroy target other enchantments. He also helps you protect Fynn in a roundabout way, because if you have 2 mana open when Kogler is in play, and someone targets Fynn with removal, instead of letting him go to the command zone, you can return him to your hand, make Kogler indestructible, and then replay Fynn for only 2 mana, so that's pretty good. I like how Kogler synergizes with humans, it's pretty fun. Then, probably one of the most important expensive cards in the deck, Vorinclex Monstrous Raider. I'm sure everyone watching this knows what Vorinclex does by now, but the gist of it is he'll put twice as many poison counters on each player as he works with counters that affect a player as well as counters that affect creatures. So he's just generally synergistic with most things that's going on in the deck. Then Turntimber Symbiosis. It's a land. It's also a spell sometimes. It's pretty good. You may have noticed that we're playing no Great Henge. Obviously, Great Henge is an amazing Magic the Gathering card. and incredibly good for green, and this is a creature-based green deck. I often find that because Fynn is, one, so aggressive, because he wants to get those 5 hits in as quickly as possible, and 2, his power is basically nothing, that you can never cast the Great Henge, which means this unfortunately isn't really a Great Henge deck. So, if you're looking to play the Great Henge, unfortunately you have to play it somewhere else, but I think it's right to not play it in this version of the deck. And then, our land base, pretty simple. Castle Garenbrig, 17 forests, 17 snow forests for Blizzard Brawl, importantly. Faceless Haven, because it's the mana land you play if you are playing Snowlands. And then Access Tunnel, which I've already mentioned, to help get your Fynn in. So yeah, this deck is fun. It's not the greatest deck in the format, but it's a pretty interesting deck. It's quite unique to focus on this like Death Touch tribal sort of thing. Where you're heavily focusing on getting one creature to hit them multiple times, or maybe sometimes a few creatures. Yeah, it's solid. I would recommend, if you're looking for something different, that you try this deck out. It's a nice sort of refreshing change of pace from some of the other decks. So yeah, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a like and a comment. I'm going to leave the desk list in the description, so if you want to try it for yourself, you can. If you do try it for yourself and you find out some really interesting things, please do leave a comment and we can have a little chat about what works and what doesn't. I'd be love to hear from you and learn how to improve my decks, and we can all improve our decks and everything will be great, and we'll be the best Brawl players on in the whole world after listen to this video, and that's exciting, isn't it? So yeah, if you enjoyed this video, do all the stuff I just said, and hopefully I'll see you for the next one. Goodbye.